All right, this is a very personal, very serious one. A few weeks ago, we experienced a miscarriage. Will we see our baby in heaven? I'll start, and then Chad, you can add to that.
Yeah.
The Bible isn't crystal clear on this. There's a lot of things in the Bible that there are principles, there's ideas that we can try and glean from. So I'm going to start with this idea to begin with, and then I'll get to some specific examples here. The big idea is this: is that God could be trusted with what we don't know. Whenever there's something that's not crystal clear in Scripture, or there's a little bit of a gap, and we go, oh, is it this way, is it this way? What I believe and what I believe to be true and crystal clear in Scripture is that God can be trusted with all the things that we're not certain of. Also, there's this moment where David in the Bible, in the Old Testament, David who wrote much of our Psalms, he was King David, David and Goliath, David and Bathsheba, if that name sounds familiar, and he has two different sons that die on two different occasions. So he has one who's an adult son. His name's Absalom. He ends up dying in battle, and he's one who's contentious and all of that, but he had kind of rejected God and God's ways, and he mourns his son who died. He mourns him differently than he mourns his infant son who passes away. And with his infant son, when his infant son passes away, he stops his kind of grieving as he's crying out to God and praying and all of that. He stops and he talks about how, he's confident he'll see his son again. But when Absalom dies, his adult son, who's kind of rebelled and rejected God, he mourns completely differently after the death of that son, because there's not this hope of I'll see him again one day. And so with that, I do think there's hope for those of you that have experienced miscarriage, which is a terrible thing to go through. I believe that there is hope that we'll see those children again one day, and I trust God with that.
Yeah, I think the passage of scripture that Robert mentioned about David, and by the way, I'm going to give you a resource if you want to jot this down, gotquestions.org. So if you have questions that we didn't get to, or just personal things that you're thinking through, a good resource is gotquestions.org. That's out of Dallas Seminary. It has all kinds of Bible references, and they give you comments and things like that. So that's a good resource. So I want to make you aware of that. This is outside the box a little bit, but years ago, I read a book called Heaven is for Real. It's a story of Colton Burpo. There was a movie. I actually went and interviewed that family, and their belief is that Colton, during a time when he was young, that he actually visited heaven and then came back. Is anybody aware of this book in the service? Okay, a lot of us in here, so you're aware of that. But one of the things that we talked about in the interview, I showed it here at Sun Valley, but this has been 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But one of the things we talked about, and one of the reasons why the family believes that Colton did have, at a minimum, a vision, or he really did go to heaven, is he was talking to his parents about his sister. And they had had a miscarriage a few years earlier, and Colton was too young to even know what a miscarriage is or to know anything about it. But he says that he saw this girl, he said her name, and they actually named the baby that was miscarried, and it was the same name, which just really kind of freaked him out. And so that's a just anecdotal kind of testimonial thing that I think if that's you, perhaps maybe communicates in a way. I actually, the Bible teaches in Psalm 139 that God knits us together in our mother's womb. And so, yes, I think it's quite possible. And I think from David's testimony in Scripture, that's possible. And then this thing with the Burpos, I can't explain it, but something supernatural happened. And the kid knew some things otherwise he wouldn't know. But he says he met his sister, and he said the same name that the parents named the baby that was miscarried 2 years earlier. So thank you for asking that very vulnerable question.